Welcome to this week's episode of Now That's Something Good, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary in the everyday ordinary. Now here's your host, Sarah Good.
Hey friends, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad that you are tuning in today, wherever you are listening from. Today we have a really special story to share. Our friend Tiffany joins us, and I just want to give you a little heads up. Her story has some pretty difficult parts to it. So this might be an episode that if you normally listen with little kids around, you might want to put your earplugs in or listen to this one when you're surrounded by a little older ears. And also just want to give a little bit of a trigger warning. We're going to talk about a really difficult subject and just want to give you a little bit of a heads up before we go into this. But this conversation is so important, and what Tiffany shares, I believe, is really going to impact you today. And just a reminder that God uses everything in our story, even some of the really hard parts. So here we go. Here's my conversation with Tiffany. Hey, Tiffany, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you are with us today on Now That's Something Good. We're going to jump right in. You've got kind of quite the story to share today. Yes. And I am excited that you have said that you'll come. And for those of you listening, I know there's going to be a lot of moments. There's going to be a lot of laughter. I can tell that already. Tiffany, I've already been laughing in like the 10 minutes that we've been here in the studio prepping. But there's going to be some hard moments today too. And I actually love that. That's part of the reason why we wanted to start the podcast, to be able to share really cool stories. But Tiffany, starting out, tell us who you are and tell us about your family. Your family.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
What was that?
You're like, what did I say? That kind of came out funny. Your family.
Right.
See, I already can't talk well today.
No, you're good. My name's Tiffany Henning. I have 4 kids. The ages are crazy. We have 19 down to 2.
That is crazy.
It's been a little intense the last few years. So we have 19, almost 13, almost 4, and 2.
Okay.
So busy.
You are busy. And what does your day life look like right now?
Well, hallelujah. The kids went back to school this week.
Yes.
Which has been amazing because we all needed it. Like it was getting ugly.
Yeah.
So it's just, back to the mom driving around, packing lunches, all of that. Before all of this, I did full-time photography.
Yeah.
So I do not do that anymore. I had actually officially stepped down last year.
Okay.
So I do have a couple sessions coming up for fall for friends and stuff. But honestly, this is probably the most relaxing it's been all 2020.
Okay.
Was this last week. So,
hey, that's
which
good.
is saying a lot.
Yes, that's good. We'll come back and talk more about your photography, but Tiffany is an incredible photographer. I've just followed her work online, and you really are very good. Okay, so Tiffany, we were joking about this a little bit. I want to ask you, how do you remember how we know each other?
So what I remember is we had a mutual friend, and I did her pictures for my red thread.
Yes.
And the girls were all little models for her clothing.
Yes.
That's
the story I remember. So we were joking beforehand going, I don't know if we know the same story. I just feel like we've known each other for so long.
And that's what my husband was asking me the same thing last night. And I was like, so it was kind of weird because that is how we met.
Yeah.
And I was like, but then I don't remember how it went from there. Because then it was like we just always were kind of in that
Facebook
circles?
world too, where it's like we were became Facebook friends, and then our paths would, I feel like, just kind of cross.
Because the girls they went to theater camp. They were Oompa Loompas.
Yes, they were.
And so cute.
It was very cute.
So it just always was kind of like, we just would bump into each other in like random places. And, follow each other on Facebook. So, so my red thread is how I think it started.
Yes. And this was really cool. So we started the podcast, and you're going to tell your story about, Tiffany has a really cool project that she has started, and we're going to tell you all about that and how you can find, because you need to go pay attention to it and follow along. But I saw you posting, and that's how we got here, because I'd seen you sharing more over the last few months about your story. And then literally I started to message you, and you literally sent me a message at the same time. And it was a God thing.
It had to have been. And, and I think people don't believe, because I was even just out of friends right before this. And she was like, so how do you know her? And again, I'm telling her, and I go, and then here's the crazy thing. Like, I'm complimenting her on her picture and saying congratulations. Yes. And at the exact same moment, she's writing me and was like, hey, would you want to do this? So clearly this had to be done.
Yes.
It needed to be here.
Yes. And I'm excited.
So, I am too, and nervous. It's,
It's going to be all right. We're just having a conversation. There's just a couple hundred people listening. No, it's okay. I'm kidding. It's good. Well, Tiffany, let's jump in. I want you to just start telling your story wherever you want to start with it. Okay. And I'll let you go from there. So
yeah, I've been trying to like piece this together, like how far back it all has to go. And really, I guess it kind of, the project itself starts with photography.
Okay.
I kind of feel. So, like, I guess it was like 10 years ago now.
Okay.
I don't even know. So 10 years ago, we miscarried twins. And I was pregnant at the same time that a friend of mine was. And so when she was getting ready to deliver, I was just like, hey, like, do you think I could take pictures? Like, it was just like a healing thing I felt like I need to do. I have never took professional pictures before in my life.
Okay.
But I just felt like I needed to do it. And so I did. And honestly, like my photography, it just kind of skyrocketed from there because we were in a play group at the time and people were like, oh, I don't want to go to JCPenney's because this was like literally back at like JCPenney days, which is crazy now. People are probably like, what?
JCPenney. Yeah.
Right. But it was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And so it kind of started from there. And as the years went, like we lost more. We ended up getting sick.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was very vocal about it. Mm-hmm. And because I was vocal about it, like I had a lot of clients who would come in and they would open up.
Okay.
And, it's just something that for some reason, like so many of us
have experienced.
Experienced. So, so as we're dealing with all of that, like then we do find out that we're pregnant again, with my son Jackson, who will be 4 next week, and I don't even know how.
Yeah, you snap and the time goes by.
Seriously. And part of that is because when he was 6 months old, we found out we were pregnant again. And
okay, wait, I need you to say this again because this is so important. I think this is great. So your new baby that you had all this time. So remember, okay, your daughter, you've got, say that again. So you've got Isabel,
So we have Isabella, who's 19.
Okay.
Aubrey, who will be 13 in October.
Okay.
Jackson will be 4 now.
Okay.
So they're 9 years apart.
Okay.
And so when we lost the twins, Aubrey was just turning 3.
Okay.
So it was 6 full years of infertility and losses. And so we had just honestly thought it would never happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we found out about Josh, when Jackson was 6 months old, even my OB was like, what? When I called her.
I do remember your Facebook posts around that time and they were funny, which I just have to stop. Your Facebook, Tiffany has the cutest pictures of her kids. They're crazy. They're Pinterest photography dream goals of your kids.
They're crazy.
They're always you just did Jackson's pictures and it's a friend that did the picture, but he's inside a
Ken doll.
Yes. The bar. It's the cutest.
It's so him. She said she was doing Barbie ones and I was like, could we do Ken? Because it is so Jackson. And it was.
Well, he looks totally, you said GQ and that's exactly,
that pose was on him.
I love it. Okay. So Jackson's 6 months old and you find out you're expecting again.
Yeah. So they're going to be 15 months apart. Yeah. And honestly, looking back that moment was kind of the pinpoint of everything that was about to come because it was just this season of chaos. And I hate even saying that, but it honestly is what it was. So the pregnancy was thankfully very uneventful. It was honestly the easiest pregnancy ever.
That's good.
And then we had him in December and it was just the floodgates of everything came pouring.
Okay.
Starting with, he was born in December and my oldest, so she would have been 16 or 17 at the time. She was a junior. I know that. Okay. Her birthday's February. She withdrew from school. She was being bullied. She had horrible anxiety. We had been, dealing with that. So she didn't want to go back. I had a newborn, had a 1-year-old.
And that doesn't make you anxious or feel a little overwhelmed, that would do that to anybody.
Seriously. And so we had found a Christian counselor for her.
Okay.
One of my photography friends had recommended a therapist who specialized in teens.
Okay.
And we started taking her to her. So she went to see her. This was December. then like January or February, my husband's like, oh, I want to start seeing her. So then he starts going to see her. And eventually we both started seeing her because now, like I said, words can't even describe the amount of just chaos that was pouring in that season.
Yeah.
So our marriage is like imploding. And so we start going to marriage counseling together.
Okay.
And this is kind of, I guess, when everything just came to a head, because I remember we're sitting there, we're in marriage counseling, and I'm thinking, oh, like, we're going to dive into everything that's wrong with him. Yeah. Like, let me lay it out.
Isn't that how it always goes?
Right?
You're the problem, buddy. Let's figure
I'm
this
like,
out.
let me tell you what. And I remember she looks at me just dead serious, and she's like, how long were you sexually abused?
Wow.
And I was like, what? That is not why we were here. Like, I 100% like felt bamboozled is really the only word, because I'm like, are you listening to all the crazy of my life? Any one of those things would send me here. Like, that what happened so long ago, that has nothing to do with it. And she's like, but it does.
Okay.
And so it really just all kind of started that day.
Okay.
Because I remember she was like, you need to come in by yourself next time. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, let's do this. Like, and I still kind of went in. I like joke that I went in kicking and screaming. And I did and I didn't. Like, I knew why I was there, but I honestly had no idea what was going to come from it.
Okay.
I was sexually abused majority of my childhood. Okay. It started right around 3.
Okay.
And went all the way up to 4th, 5th grade. And so, like, I knew of it. Like, I knew it was there. I knew it was a part of me. It was just nothing that I thought was truly, I didn't think it was a big deal. Like, I was just like, the saying, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. That was my motto. Like, it was like, everything's great. Yeah. I can handle this.
That only lasts for so long, though, doesn't it?
Yes.
And that's what was happening, right?
Yes. It was... Like I said, it was just intense. And so after, 3 years almost now of doing all of this work.
Yeah.
I can look back and there were so many signs that I was self-destructing in so many ways that my abuse was taking over my life that I had no idea.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to look back now and be like, how did we not see it sooner? Like,
So I got to add two questions here. Sorry.
Good.
So did John know, had you talked at this point, had you really talked about the sexual abuse to anybody? Did John know that was a part of your story, or?
He knew that there was abuse. This is kind of the interesting point, and I think this is something that people really need to pay attention to, because I didn't even realize that I was doing this. And then as I started talking to other survivors, we all do it. There is something in us that downplays trauma like no other.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's a survival tactic. I honestly don't know, but we do.
Yeah.
So all I had ever said was, I had been abused. He never knew the extent. Even actually when it came out in therapy, like, he didn't know the full extent until just about 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay.
So even 3 years of working through all of this, I still hadn't really said it. Like, I was just like, I was abused. Like, abuse is abuse. You don't need to know the details. Yeah. I wasn't even fully ready to, like, say everything.
Yeah.
And again, like, I honestly didn't think there was a reason to. Like,
right.
And I had a couple of friends who knew that things had happened, but again, they didn't really know the extent, and we just never talked about it.
Right.
And so even when I started to, like, spiral, nobody knew that was what was going on.
Okay. And you said that because of the abuse, you didn't even understand how much that was playing into somewhat of your everyday life. Yes. I think that probably is true of a lot of people listening, or trauma that anybody has incurred, no matter what that is. Can you give just an example of something that's like, hey, this was going on and I thought it was just normal life, but it was really...
Yeah. So there's actually a lot, and I could go in like 10,000 different ways to talk about it. But honestly, like, trauma brains are, they're crazy. And in one of the, there was so much of my story and so much that I can look back and be like, God put me exactly where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And one of those is my therapist. And you'll probably hear me mention her a lot because honestly, like I credit her with so much.
That's good.
We started seeing the therapist specifically for Iz.
Okay.
And it come to find out that she deals primarily with sexual abuse victims. She doesn't know how, like she doesn't advertise for it.
Yeah.
She just does.
Yeah.
And so she also very much understands trauma brains.
Okay.
And so we talk about it a lot. And
because trauma really, it rewires your brain. Like what's going on in their pathways. It's
100%.
Crazy.
And the younger that you are that the abuse happens, or the longer the duration goes on, meaning like year-wise, like certain parts of your brain will just stop. And because it's a protection.
Yeah.
Your brain thinks that you can't handle, and I mean, it's right. Like, a lot of people, your brain thinks you can't handle what's going on. So it's going to literally lock it away, and it's going to lock away anything surrounding it.
Yeah.
So one of my go-tos, and it still is go, go, go.
Yeah.
If I stop, I think. So my brain is like, we're just not going to stop.
Yeah.
We are going to go, go, go. And I mean, I took on anything and everything I could do. I went from, I'm not going to work, full time. Like this is just going to be a little bit of extra spending money to, like I have 1 free hour this week. I could do 20 minis in that time. Like, I mean, it's literally insane looking back now. The biggest thing though was I started having these episodes. This is actually not something that anybody even really knows. I still haven't shared this part of it yet, but I kind of had a feeling I would today. Like this is something that I just kept having on my heart. Like it's going to end up coming out. So I was having these dissociative states that I had no clue.
Yeah.
No clue at all. And it was really against my family. Like I wouldn't have them with clients or friends and stuff. It was like at home. Like I would have these moments where I was screaming at them and saying horribly hateful things. Yeah. That like as a mom, I don't even know how I could say it. Right. I don't even know where in me it is.
Right.
And I had no clue.
Yeah.
And my family thought that I was like just avoiding.
Okay.
Like, they honestly were like, oh, like you start stuff and then you don't want to finish it.
Okay.
And so again, like our therapist was the one who kind of put that together because since she sees all of us, which again was another blessing.
Yeah.
That wasn't planned. She would hear one story and then she'd hear the second story.
Okay.
And then I would come in with this, it's fine, everything's fine, And
she's like, hey, that's not going to work here.
Right. And so, she was able to really put together what was going on.
Yeah.
And again, that all came to a head because like my husband, as we're going through all of this other stuff, when Josh was like 6 months old, he's the baby.
Yep.
So now we have not even a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. He fell in the backyard and...
See, I even forgot about that now that you're saying. Yeah, I forgot. I mean, there was another layer.
Mass chaos.
Yeah.
He had hurt his neck. And so because I was the primary driver because he was having seizures and stuff, he couldn't drive.
Right.
She would come to our house every now and then and do like back-to-back marathon sessions.
Yeah.
And I guess she had came. We had a session in the house. I had no clue. No clue. She's talking about it later on. And in the back of my head when she's like, oh, remember when I was at your house? And I'm thinking, you need to like work on your note taking because you have not came to my house in months.
Right.
And I'm looking at her, looking at me, and I feel like these like little like tingles going down my spine, like something. And so that was when everything really came to a head. Like that was when that session is when I really realized just how much abuse changes you.
Yeah.
And, not just the physical, like sexual abuse is a physical attack on your body.
Yeah.
There's nobody that can argue that. But what so many people don't realize is that it is a mental, emotional, spiritual attack.
Yes.
That lasts forever. Like you cannot undo what is done to you, no matter how hard you try.
Right.
And by avoiding it, we actually are only making it so much worse.
Yeah.
Because anything that your body senses as a trigger, anything that your mind is like, ooh, no, like we don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Will just keep you in this fight or flight mode where you're not even fully like, I mean, I pretty much like use like the term, like I wasn't even really living. I wasn't even really aware, honestly, for like so many years because I have like these huge gaps where I don't even know what was going on. And, you know, and you look at pictures, you wouldn't see it. Like, it would look like, oh, like she is totally like present and look at all these things she's doing. And I'm like, I have no clue.
Yeah.
No clue. Because my brain by that point was so turned off because I had reached that point where I knew I had to deal with it. And I wasn't dealing with it.
Right. And the weird thing about trauma, I'm sure I mean, like when other traumas start happening, that's often when, and you're stressed and your brain is stressed and your body is stressed. And it's like, hey, we can't handle this anymore. And you clearly were in a season.
That was it. It was my stress was my full trigger. Like, it was like, okay. Yeah. You know? And it honestly would have came out at some point.
Right.
Like, I think you can only avoid the things you're avoiding for so long.
You're right. Right.
And then you have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tiffany, you have found, I mean, you've been doing the work and then out of this, and we'll keep kind of cycling around here, but you've really taken on this big project here. So talk about how did you start? The project's called Project Ember, and you can talk a little more about that, but how did you get from I'm having these episodes where I don't know, I'm in severe trauma, stress, to now being in a state where you're able to use and talk about it and use some of your story to help other people?
So it all kind of started, honestly, like this time last summer. So I was like, you know, oh, I'm healed. Like, you know, maybe I should go back to photography.
Yeah.
And I didn't really want to. I kept feeling like I was supposed to do something else, but you know, it was my safety, it was my go-to.
Yeah.
And, honestly, like, it's kind of funny. I went on one shoot and I got bit by a snake.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
that's a...
Right. Let me tell you, like, I had already been ignoring things. And when the Lord wants to get your attention, like, he's going to keep... when he sends a snake, like...
You're like, yes, Lord, I hear it. Okay.
Right. And the funny thing is, and I laugh because it is, like, it is funny to laugh at some of it now because I'm like, oh my gosh. But the session I was supposed to do right after that was another photographer friend of mine, and she called me out of the blue because I had a lot of apprehension about going back. So now I'm like, I didn't feel like I should in the first place, and now I'm terrified of a snake, and you know, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And what I was actually scared of was I had this idea that I was supposed to do something with this topic, like that I was going to be speaking on it, and I was like, no. And so she called me that night, and she was like, I just want to let you know that we're not doing our session. And at first I thought she was mad at me. And I was like, oh, you know, like, no, I'll be fine. And she's like, no. She's like, I just really feel like God wants you to do something else. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had to call and tell you that because I feel like you are battling. She goes, I don't know what you're battling. Because at this point I still hadn't announced anything on Facebook.
Okay.
She goes, I feel like you are battling something and you need to know that this is what you're supposed to do. And I was like, okay.
I love that.
And it was like she, you know, and she's very, very good with words, and I'm not. I get all jumbled and I ramble. And so everything she had said though was what I was thinking in my head. Like it was so, you know, God was like, you need to call her, now. And so that was like August. Okay. I guess. And in November, my therapist, she's a vet, former like military, like veteran.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Not animal vet.
I was like, that's interesting.
Right.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you for clarifying. Wow,
sorry.
She's a therapist and a veterinarian. Like this lady's
vet.
Okay.
And veteran. And she won a seat at the Rise business.
Okay, yeah.
With Rachel Hollis.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
And she came back and she was like, Tiffany, like, you need to go. She's like, I don't care when you go. I don't care how you go. Like, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where it was like the next day you realize Facebook is listening to you.
Yes.
Because all of a sudden an ad for Rise Fort Myers pops up on my phone. And I'm like, okay. And the crazy thing is, my best friend from high school lives in Fort Myers. Oh, and we've always joked about like going down there to visit.
Yeah.
And so this is like November, and the conference is January. So tickets are sold out.
Okay.
And so I text my husband and I'm like, hey, like they have like these like lottery tickets that you can buy, but it's like 3 times as much money.
Oh, wow.
To, but what do you think? And he was like, I think you need to go. I think if we can do it, you can do it. And so it worked out because originally I was going to stay with my friend. And then we had hotel points and we had airline points. And so we were like, you know what, I'll just stay there and we'll meet for, dinner and drinks or something. And if you've never followed Rachel Hollis or you don't really know what it is.
Yeah. Explain.
The Rise Conference is basically, it's like 3 straight days of therapy and personal growth. There's no sugarcoating.
That sounds fun and intense and terrifying all at the same time.
With a lot of 90s music mixed in.
Well, that makes it better.
90s music.
Yeah.
So I went down there. It was like the first weekend in January. And I had seen the movie. She has a movie called Made for More.
Okay.
It came out a few years ago, and it basically follows the Rise Conference. So it's like behind the scenes, and there's certain parts of the conference they show. Obviously, not all of it because they want you to go.
Right.
And so I knew how the days were broken up, and the dates, past, present, future, with the emphasis being day 1, your past, because you can't move forward to your future if you're not willing to deal with your past.
That's good. That's very true.
So I knew day 1 would be hard. They also do this thing, and it's called Stand Up for Your Sister.
Okay.
And so what this is they give you an 8.5 by 11 sheet. It has all these boxes that you check for yourself. So it's like, I abuse drugs. I overeat. I hate the way I look.
Yeah.
I have lost a child. I battle infertility. And because I had always been so vocal about my miscarriages, and because I knew how many people around me had battled this and who had lived this life, so you get your note and you check it off and then you pass it.
Okay.
And they keep passing it. So you end up with someone else's,
which
is why it's called Stand Up for Your Sister. So when they read off a check mark, you stand up.
Okay.
And the idea is that if you've never been able to speak these things that have happened to you, you can stand up for someone else.
Yeah. That's powerful.
So the Rise Conference was at the Hertz Arena, and I meant to double check this number earlier and I forgot. It was either 4,000 or 40,000.
Okay.
Whatever the max amount
a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever the max amount can hold. This was her first conference that had ever sold out.
Wow.
So the demographics are pretty much like 20 to 50 years of age, I would say, all females.
Yeah.
So looking at that number, and knowing what I knew about infertility and everything else, I honestly thought that would be what almost everybody would stand up for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the very last question was, I have been sexually abused. And when she said, that question, and when you stood up, I can't even put into words. It still actually gives me goosebumps because almost every single woman in that auditorium stood up.
Yeah. Wow.
And like I said, it's either 4,000 or 40, whatever. It was almost every single woman. And I immediately started bawling. And the lady next to me is holding me, which, that alone is weird. I don't cry and I don't like people touching me. But, I was just heartbroken. Yeah. And I'm sobbing. And then as quick as that came, I was mad and I was so fired up. And all I kept doing was looking at all these women and thinking, if this is truly the norm, and I hate using the word norm because it shouldn't be the norm. Yeah. But if that is the statistic, if what we read online is true.
And what's the statistic? Just tell it to us real quick.
So the statistic for women is 1 out of 8. 1 out of 8 women will be sexually abused in her lifetime. Okay. Males is 1 in 6. Okay. And I actually think the male one is higher than what is listed, but most men don't talk. Yeah. So I actually think that it is higher, but that's just my theory. I'm not sure. So I'm looking at all these women and, and I've heard these numbers, my husband deals with this. He's told me the numbers. My therapist deals with this. She tells me the numbers, but until you see it, you don't believe that it's true because you don't hear it. Right. Nobody is talking about it. And so I'm watching these women and I was just we have to do something. If this is the truth, then does that mean that the things that I think about myself, does she think that? Does she hate herself? Does she struggle so hard some days to just get out of bed or to sleep? Or, is she taking it out on her kids and her husband and not even knowing? Like, is she battling all these things that she doesn't know because she honestly thinks that she's so alone?
Right.
And obviously we're not alone.
No.
We're not alone.
Yeah.
And so I came home and I was just fired up. Like I got off the plane and I was like, no more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had still so I came home and I was like, okay, I got to do something. I still didn't really know what I was going to do. And a few weeks later, I'm like scrolling like Entertainment Weekly or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
as one does.
Right, exactly. Like, killing time and catching up on the gossip.
Yeah.
And I saw a promo for Jessica Simpson's new book.
Okay.
And I don't follow her on Facebook. Like, I mean, I'm a 90s fan. Like, I loved her music and stuff, but I don't follow celebrities really. So I didn't know she was writing this book and she was talking out about her abuse.
Okay. That's what the book is about.
That's what her book is about. And it's a beautiful book. Like I can't even put into words how amazing she is with words.
Okay.
Like if you think she can sing, she was born to be a writer.
Wow.
It's beautiful.
We'll make sure to link it in the show notes so people can find it. Okay.
It's beautiful. But one of the things that had drawn me in when I'd read it is she talks about how she told her family and it was just completely brushed over. And then the book is really about later, like how it controlled her life, how not dealing with it, not acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Had just, she turned to alcohol and food and, stayed in relationships that were toxic because she thought there's something wrong with her.
Right.
And it broke me because it was all these things that I was still dealing with. So I had shared it on Facebook and I didn't necessarily come out and say that I had been abused, but I wrote enough that if someone wanted to know, they would know.
Okay.
And as soon as I shared that, I started getting messages from people who were like, oh my gosh, like I thought it was just me.
Wow.
And this kind of kept going on. A few weeks later, Aubrey had a field trip to the Holocaust Museum. And the whole way there, like, I was just like, I need to tell my story. I couldn't even explain why or where it came from.
Yeah.
And it felt like ants crawling. Like I was like, if I was going out of my skin.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, if I don't say this, like I'm going to burst.
Right.
And so I'm like, I have to do it. I have to tell my story. And then, no, I can't tell my story. Like, and
isn't that how it happens? It's like you feel like you should do something and then you're like,
yes. And so we're on our way to this Holocaust Museum and I'm like battling again. And finally I was like, okay, Lord, like I will share my story, but you're going to have to make someone else go first. And I will piggyback off of them. And I kid you not, like, I mean, I laugh. It's not funny, but we get to the museum and he immediately starts talking about how the museum was started. And it was in honor of his grandpa who never wanted, and these were his words, and I will never forget it. He never wanted his story told.
Wow.
And he fought his own story for majority of his life. And finally, a great-grandson or a grandson was like, will you please tell me your story for my project? And he was like, well, I can't say no to my son.
Yeah.
And so he told it. But as soon as he told it, he realized that other people needed to hear their story.
Yeah.
So like I'm hearing this and I'm like, okay, Lord, but we still had a deal. You were going to make someone else go first. This isn't the same thing. And so we break for lunch and I pull up my phone and boom. There it is. 2 of my photographer friends we're on a separate photography page and they are talking about how all of a sudden they just cannot handle life. And, they were abused as children and all of a sudden their life is just out of control.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, here we go. Like,
okay, God.
Right. And and it took that moment of seeing them and realizing that, they really do feel all those things that I do.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew why we put that on ourselves, because once you start talking out about it, and if you haven't been through it, it honestly doesn't make sense, because you would be like, why would you blame yourself for being abused as a child?
Right.
Why do you feel shame? Why do you feel that you are not worthy? And I honestly, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I just know that we do.
I think it's can I?
Yeah,
go. Here's my count. No, this is not. I think it's partly the enemy because he's crafty and it says in John that he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he can continue to make us feel like we're the victim, and isn't that what he did? He shifts truth. Because like you just said, that is not your fault. You did not ask for it. You do not deserve it. There is nothing is right or good about what has happened to you or anybody else that has been abused sexually, physically, emotionally, nothing good. That is purely evil. And what the enemy loves to do, right, is take those things and make us feel like it's me. No one's going to understand. They're going to think I did something, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a minute, is that often sometimes in the story of sharing abuse, they're like, well, what did you do? Wrong question, right?
Exactly. 100%.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And the enemy loves to do that so that if he can make us feel caught up, you said something so like it's in sharing our story that God continues to use that and it brings healing. It doesn't change the story, but there's healing in that. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No.
Because I think that's so
great.
good, like what he does. And that's why I'm so proud of you for continuing to share your story because it brings light to it and there's healing that happens when we share that. So, okay, sorry. Sarah moment.
No, you're
Continue
good.
on. So you heard that.
It.
The photography friends and then.
Yeah, and I was just like reading their comments about just, I hate myself and my family would be better off without me. And I am just, like, they are just barely holding on by a thread. Yeah. And like, these are like very successful photographers, gorgeous women, picture perfect families. And I mean, they're barely living. Wow. And you wouldn't know.
Right.
Sorry. And so I was just like, okay. And I don't even know, honestly, what I wrote because it was like, I just let the floodgates go. And the funny thing is when I hit send, I was on the last decimal of an Instagram thing. And so it was like I couldn't have said anymore, but I didn't need to. I had said everything apparently I needed to say. And as soon as I hit enter, I was like, oh my gosh, what did you do?
What did I just do?
Like, abort. And, you know, thankfully, like, immediately someone hit, like, love. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay. But, you know, I had that moment of anxiety and fear where I was like, I cannot believe you just did that.
Right.
Because the funny thing is, a few months before Rise, a few months before all of this, I think even before the snake bite, you know, my therapist, we had been working through so much and, you know, and she was like, I just really see you doing something with this. Like, I see you having a platform to speak out about this. And, you know, at the time I thought she honestly meant like a platform. Like I was going to be like up on, and I was like, oh, okay, that's weird. And then she's like, I just really see you doing this. And I'm like, are you even listening to me? Like, have you heard me these last 2 years? I will never ever tell my story. Yeah. And she's like, I don't know. She's like, I just see it in you. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Wow. So I shared it. And as soon as I shared it, it was like a 7:00 at night, I guess. And I mean, just ding, 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 ding. Yeah. I woke up to 20 messages that next day. All from friends, because it wasn't public. It was public. It was only my friends. Yeah. Like it wasn't anybody on Facebook could read it. Right. So, you know, they were all the same thing. Oh my gosh. Like I thought it was just me. The same thing. Like nobody can believe that it's as common as it is. Yeah. And so, a few days later, still didn't really know what I was going to do with this. I was just like, oh, we're just, you know, it's out there. So a few days later, I decided I'm going to go for a run. I don't know. I do not run. Like, so I was like, I'm going to start running, you know? And so I go for this run and I have my Rise 2020 playlist playing because it's like, you know, like I said, it was all like motivational music, mixed with 90s rap and pop, and you know, so I'm like jamming
all kinds of good stuff.
Yes. And Fight Song comes on. Oh. And as soon as it comes on, I mean, I stopped dead in my tracks and I had this vision in my head of a photo shoot. And I mean, and a vision is the only word that I can use to describe it because, you know, like as a photographer, like I'm a very visual person, but I've never been able to like see something like this. Like even when it comes to like designing sets and stuff, I'm like, you know, like we'll take a little of this and a little of that and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
I don't have a vision. Like I saw 12 women. There was like a line of fire.
Wow.
It was just like powerful. And I was like, okay, well, I'm like, am I hallucinating from running? Am I having a stroke? Like,
That's great.
And so I went home and I tell my husband, I'm like, I think I want to do a photo shoot. And he was like, then you should do it. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I want 12 women. And he's like, why 12? I'm like, I don't know. I want 12 women.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, you should do it. And so I immediately get on Facebook and I don't say what my idea is.
Yeah.
I just said, I'm looking for, no, let me back up. I wanted 12 women. I knew 3.
Okay.
Who we had shared a little bit of our stories or they've spoken out.
Yeah.
And so I private messaged them. And I was like, would you want to do this with me?
Yeah.
Would you want to stand up in front of everybody and do this project and speak out about it? And they were like, yes, let's do it.
Wow.
Then I shared it on Facebook.
Okay.
That's what happened. And I was like, so I want to do this project and I need, a few more survivors who would be willing to stand up and tell their story. And I know what I'm asking of you, and, don't feel like you have to do it, but if you feel like you want to do it, private message me. No joke. Within 2 hours, I had exactly 9 messages.
Wow.
I had 12 women.
Wow.
Just right there.
Wow.
12 women. So we started like this little Facebook chat.
Yep.
And they didn't know, none of them knew each other. I knew all of them. And almost all of them were brought to me through photography. Wow. So again, like it all just kept coming. It was just eerie. It all kept coming in full circle. And so we started like sharing our stories and it was hard. Like I'm not even going to lie. It was 2 very emotional days. Of wow. Like, but the crazy thing was I was the only one that was going through therapy at the time. Some of them had been in and out and some of them hadn't dealt with it at all yet.
Yeah.
But as we were sharing our stories, we're hearing very similar things.
Okay.
The abuse itself may not have been the same.
Yeah.
But there was very common threads between all of it, especially with how we felt about ourselves. And that is honestly what I wanted the project to really be an emphasis about. Yeah. Like, it's 2020. We cannot pretend that we do not know sexual abuse happens anymore.
Right.
We know that it does.
Yes.
We may not want to believe that it is as common as it is, but we know that it happens.
Right.
And we do need to be aware of it. And that's a whole nother, I could go forever on that. But what we don't focus on is the lasting what is left and how we feel and how we view ourselves.
Right.
And so they're all sharing and they're like, oh my gosh, like I thought it was just me. I thought I was alone. I thought, all these crazy things that I thought, I believe that I caused this, like all of this. So we're sharing and we decide that we're going to do the shoot it was like the first weekend of April and then COVID.
And then
COVID. And,
dun, dun, dun.
right.
It's like that.
Oh my gosh. I was like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
And we had decided we're going to put it on hold because, we wanted to put this out there, but we didn't want people to be like, oh my gosh, you have more than 10 people. Like,
Right. There was a lot going on.
There was so much, especially at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, who knew it would be 6 months later before we would come back to this?
Right.
And so anyway, so finally, like one day, like out of nowhere, I'm like, okay, like it's time. We've got to start dealing with this again. Let's get this project going. And I did a couple of the shoots. The one thing we decided to change was instead of doing a big group shoot, because we figured it would be too hard at this point to get everybody together.
Right.
We just do individual shoots.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do a huge shoot, hopefully in November.
Okay.
With like anybody who wants to be a part of it.
Wow.
And so it actually worked out for the better. It was like a small little COVID blessing.
Yeah.
And I had this idea, and I don't think we were going to do it originally. So again, it just worked where, because I really want the emphasis to be not necessarily the abuse itself. Like we all know that the abuse happened, but what we're left with isn't true. Like we are so much more than what we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And what we believe about ourselves.
Yes.
And so I had this idea where every person picked a word. And then they were like, well, what if our words match, we have the same word. And I'm like, it's fine. Like, it's your word.
Yeah,
it is whatever you honestly feel about yourself.
Yeah.
That has carried you through.
Right.
So we all had this word with the idea that we were going to burn it away. And I think only 2 people had the same word. And everyone else, but the words are very similar.
Yeah.
And really it was shame, invisible, unloved, unworthy. Can't remember what some of the other ones were, but they were all the same, just idea. And it's just mind-boggling to me because I look at these women and I'm like, you are so strong. Like, you went through things that nobody should have gone through.
Right.
And you're still here.
Yeah.
And you're fighting and you're doing it, but we don't see it like that. We don't see ourselves like that.
Right.
And so we're doing these individual shoots and it's amazing. I'm getting ready to release it. And the next morning I'm like scrolling through Facebook and boom, I see someone with the exact same shoot.
Oh gosh.
The exact same idea.
Right.
And I'm like, are you kidding?
Right.
Like, and the thing was, it's not that your husband was photography.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's a competitive market.
Yep.
It is not always full of people who want to see you succeed.
Right. Right.
It is full of people who want to go viral for the wrong reasons. Yep. And so that was my fear. And actually, when we had first started talking about this project, I was like, please do not share this with anybody.
Yeah.
I go, and it is not for me. Like, I do not even do photography anymore. But if we go viral or if that happens, like, I want it to be for the right reason.
Right.
And not because as soon as we came back from COVID, it was like sexual abuse and trafficking. And those are the hot
getting
topics.
A lot of, yes. Yeah.
And people think that we actually planned it for that time, but we didn't. Like, it was supposed to be before.
Which is crazy timing how that has all.
Yes.
Crazy.
And so I was like, no, and so I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? Like, I don't want to release my stuff now. And people are going to think that we're just jumping on, on this and they're not going to trust us. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm just going to write her. Like, I'm just going to see if she wants to collaborate. I'm like, the worst she'll say is no. And you know what? I can still share it. I can still share her project because now we have 2 photographers, thousands of miles apart.
Right.
20-something women who are all saying literally the exact same thing.
Right.
So if anything, it just shows even more how big this is. Well, thankfully, she was all like, oh my gosh, yes, like, I want to be a part of it. And so we released it all together.
Okay.
Which was just amazing.
So tell me about, because I want to go back and hear about the name, but tell me just the images you shot them for your part are all very similar. You talked about the words, but you kind of had a picture. Tell us about the different shots you captured.
Yeah. So for our side, we did a regular portrait picture. And then we had everybody bring a picture from the time of their abuse.
Yeah.
Or around their abuse, something that just kind of, and that was hard. And I honestly didn't realize until I had to go find my own picture that all of that was buried away. And I've never even gone to look through it. And even opening the box because I knew what would be in there.
Yeah.
I was sweat and anxiety, my heart is pounding and I'm like, I don't even want to see this. And how sad is that to not even, there were years that I choose to not remember.
Right.
And, the girls, they were all the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what would happen was the girls would show up for the shoot and we would do their individual portrait first.
Okay.
And then we would do a happy picture.
Okay.
Because the first session I did it backwards and realized that once we went to the one, you can't come back. I can't be
I've been crying and now I look like a hot mess and you want me to smile.
Right.
That's good.
We quickly pivoted, and so we would do that. And then we would take out their picture and every single session, I'm getting goosebumps now.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard. It was very hard. And you don't realize how much you avoid until it's right in your face. And you don't feel like the pain and the heartbreak and all of it until it is right there. And like one of the girls, oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking because she was also like 3. And her, I can only share this because it's out there, but her mom had made her go to the portrait studio the next day, literally the day after.
Wow.
And so when the picture came in, she ripped it in half. And so you see this huge,
wow.
And her mom taped it back together and, was mad at her and stuff. Wow. And so it was just to have to look at it brought so much more emotion.
I bet.
And, it was just everything that you try to avoid is literally right in front of you. And so from there, then everybody wrote their word. And then we took a lighter and we burned it away. And it is crazy. Like this was like, I use this term God winks. It actually, one of my friends had told it to me when I was pregnant with Jackson. Cause we had all those losses and I was terrified. That whole pregnancy and it was, oh my God, that kid, he is extra cute for a reason because it was the hardest pregnancy ever. And I was already battling all these fears that I was going to lose him because we had lost so many.
Right.
And so, but every every appointment that I had, there would be like this moment where, as my friend would call it, that's your God wink. That's everything's going to be okay. He's going to make it, like, and it would be like he would wave at the ultrasound, or like there was a rainbow one day when I was getting checked in to the hospital for tests. Like she was like, those are your God wink.
Yeah.
So at the sessions, every single session, there was a moment, sometimes more, but there is one moment of every single session that it was like, we're supposed to be here. Yeah. We're supposed to do this. This is so much bigger than just us and our own healing. Yeah. And I had said that from day one. And it was one of the reasons I was worried about it going viral in general or with anyone else or someone catching wind of it. It's nothing to do with me. I just honestly have felt from the very beginning, because of how much has just lined up. Yeah. That it was so much bigger than me.
Right.
And so, so we kept having like all of these just God wink moments in it. And you could see the instant. I have video. I recorded all the girls because originally we were going to do like a TikTok, and that didn't really work. I don't know how to do TikTok. Like, but we had shared it in a different way. Yeah. Like, I did like probably
your TikTok videos though, honestly are good. So I don't know.
Well,
like,
thank you.
They've been good.
And so like I joke, I'm like, that's probably like old person TikTok, because I just like pieced it all together and was like, here. Like, but the other stuff, I'm like, what are we doing? I don't know. So, so I have these videos, and you can see it. There's this moment where as soon as their word burns, they just breathe. And it's probably the first time that they've really breathed like that in so long. Wow. And it was just amazing. It was amazing to see, because some of them have been carrying this for decades. Yeah. Some of them, it's still recent. That really blew me away. One of them was just last year. And I'm like, I can't even believe that you can talk about this a year from now. Yeah. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me. And so there was just so much healing in that part of the project. Yeah. I was trying to remember, the Facebook group itself. So the project, it was called Project Ember. Yep. And the way that the Facebook group started was when I originally had that idea, like I was like, I can't release these from my private page. Like, I don't want people to see, some of them, their abusers are their family. Okay. Yeah. And they still have to see them. Okay. Which, that's the whole, we can go down that too. But so I was like, they can't release that. Like, they can't be, And so that was how the page came to be, I was like, I need a safe place to release these from. Yeah. And so from there, it's now kind of turned into like that page is not only a safe place to release the pictures, but we really want it to be like a community, like a share, share your story, because you have to share your story. You have to get it out there for yourself, but also for someone else who needs to hear it.
Yeah.
But really, I want to share all of the ugliness, all the things that we carry inside of us that we have to release.
Yeah.
Because you honestly just, you have no idea how much is controlling your life. And just once you start talking, I mean, it's just incredible the difference that I feel. I mean, and I am still working through so much, and I probably always will be.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very traumatic thing, and it happened for so long that I will probably always be in therapy talking about it. But I'm also, the shame that was attached to it is not there anymore, because it was like, once I started talking, I'm like, why have I not been doing this? Like, why did I allow this to literally eat away at me for so long?
So beautiful. So tell me, I want to, because you call it Project Ember, and there's a little bit of a story as to where that came from. So just tell that so people listening understand like where that came from and what does it mean?
So, I went on the first run where I had this vision, and, I was like, I'm going to run again. And so again, it was like a few days later, and it was when the idea of the Facebook page came. I was like, okay. I need a place. And I was like, it has to be fire related. I just felt like, because I had the original picture was like this woman behind this line of fire.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it has to be fire related. And Ember just kept coming in my head. And I have no idea why. I was just like, okay. And I'm like going through all the different like fire synonyms and stuff. And it just, Ember kept popping up. And I'm like, okay. So I go home and I immediately pull up, and I had to write it down so I said it right. I immediately pulled up like the definition of Ember. And it was, again, just another reminder of how like this was so much bigger than us.
Yeah.
Because the definition that I had found when I had read it, it was basically something that was thought to have been put out, but can rekindle at any time and actually pose a fire hazard.
Wow. And
I was like, that is the best representation of what we want to do. Like, we want to burn away all the stigma of not just the abuse. Like, I am huge, and we could do a whole session on that, on abuse awareness.
Yeah.
And what we really need to be focusing on, and why what we see on social media is not what we should be focusing on. But really burning that stigma away for ourselves and for others. And so it was just like, yeah, it's perfect. And I immediately texted a friend of mine. She is an amazing artist. And I was like, hey, I have this project that I'm working on, and this is the name, and I just want you to draw me a match.
Yeah.
You do it. Because I cannot draw at all.
Me either.
It is not my thing. And she was like, yes. And so she immediately like draws it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's perfect.
Wow.
And I have this on my Facebook page, and I don't remember if it was that night or the next night, but it was within like a 48-hour period that. So now we have these women, and we've shared our stories, and I have a project name. And that night, like all my night terrors come back, and I cannot, and that's normal for me. Like, I go through periods where I can't sleep, and I have to double check the doors, and I bring my kids into bed with me and lock the doors and block the doors. And, because all my abuse happened when I was sleeping.
Okay.
So it's a huge trigger of mine. And so it was a bad night. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm going to take it back. Like, I'll tell someone else, I'll give them my idea, and they can do it. And, I will support you from the side, but this is just, I cannot do this. And I go downstairs, and it was super early, like earlier than I ever get up, but I hadn't slept. So I was like, I'm just going to go downstairs, and I'm going to make my coffee, and I'm going to write everybody and say, sorry, I'm out. And I went downstairs, and on our wall in the living room, the way that the light was bouncing off of, we have yet to figure out what it was bouncing off of. Because here's the crazy thing. In order for it to hit where it hit, it had to have hit something outside and then bounced 3 different places, because the sun actually sets or rises behind the house.
Oh, wow.
So, so the sun was rising and hit something in the neighbor, like across the cul-de-sac, that then must have bounced off. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is I came downstairs. And literally on my wall is the flame that to a T is the same shape as what my friend just drew me.
It's crazy because I remember you posting that picture. I've seen your image, and it's undeniable.
Yeah. And
same thing.
I took a picture of it, and then I went and made my coffee, and I came back not even 10 minutes later, and it was gone. And I took a picture 10 minutes late, and I was like, okay, Lord, I mean, I guess we're going to do this because, you know, it was like I was over here again, like so full of fear and ready to talk myself out of it. Yeah. And it was like, no, like someone needs to hear this.
Yes.
And, you know.
Yeah. And so, Tiffany, I mean, it's been incredible. You released this. What was the day you released the first set of images?
Oh my gosh, I probably should
months
know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I
think it's been almost. Was it
in May or June?
Like, I think it was. I think it was even like either the very end of June or beginning of July.
Okay. And we'll link all of this. We'll share some pictures. We'll give everybody, so they could look for on Facebook the Project Ember page if they search.
Yeah. So I had to change it a bit because when I went to put in hashtag Project Ember, apparently there's like 1,000 Project Ember names.
Of course.
So it's a hashtag Project Ember 2020.
Okay.
Because it was the only way to take it to, I mean, there were some weird projects with that name.
You're like, don't go to those ones.
Right.
That's great. Well, you guys all need to go look this up and look at the image, and we'll post some of them to see. But it's incredible how you tell the story through those images, and you post them and you see the woman standing there and then holding their picture and then their card, and then you show it burnt, you know, like it's beautiful. And you've told their story. It's hard. You probably need to take some moments, or maybe I even told you, like, I got through a few. It was late at night, and then I was like, okay, I need to take a break and come back because
they're hard. They're hard stories.
It's hard, but it's reality.
It is.
And I love what you're doing, that you are shedding light on it. And I love that idea of Project Ember, because what was also meant to burn you up didn't. And now you're using that really hard thing to bring good. And so, Tiffany, I guess I would just, tell me, what is one or two good things that you have seen? You've shared some of them along the way already, but coming out of your story with this, or sharing the stories, what are some things that you're finding that, as these horrible, like I said, evil, horrible things happen, but some good moments still coming out of the ashes of that?
Like project-wise good stories?
Either way, whatever. You project-wise.
Really, I mean, like I thought about that question. All the other ones, I'm like, oh, like I have an answer for that. And then this one, I'm like, oh, what is good? Honestly, like what kept coming back to me about not even just this project, but just anyone I know who has been through something so horribly traumatic, like losing a child, battling cancer, their kids like I have friends who have been through so many horribly traumatic things, and they get up every day and they have no idea how inspiring they are for taking these things that would break anybody else and easily could break them.
Yeah.
And I don't want to necessarily owning it, but they're just incredible. Like, it's just inspiring to watch them overcome all of these things and to be like this strength for other people, even if they don't even know that they are.
Right. And
really the project is that, and it's taking back your story and inspiring others, but it's also realizing that you are not broken.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You are not unloved.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture. I'll definitely have to share this one because it's honestly one of my favorite pictures of the whole project, and it's her word was unloved.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she thought her entire life.
Yeah.
Because she was raped at 12. And so she just always felt unloved by her family, unloved by God, unloved by everybody. And so her word was unloved. And when we went to burn it away, it would not burn past love. Like, so it burned the and then the flame went out.
Wow.
We tried to burn it again and the flame went out. And so she was left with loved. And it was the last picture of the entire project.
Wow.
And it was like the best representation of all of it, because at the heart of it, that is how we feel, whether we realize it or not, whether we realize that the things that we're doing are sabotaging our own happiness because we feel unloved.
Yeah.
And so to watch all of us, myself included, to go through all of this and to see that it's not true and that we are, and to watch these women who, 6 months ago, like I was just like, hey, I have this idea for a project. And now, I mean, they're out there speaking out and they are like, hey, like, this happened, and they have people writing them. Like it's just amazing. It's amazing.
And since you started it, thousands of people have seen this. You were highlighted on Channel 4 News?
Yes, Channel 4 News.
Yeah, picked up the story. I mean, which is crazy in and of itself. And so, Tiffany, I guess just kind of as we're closing, I know there's so much more. We're going to have to bring you back again to talk, because there's so much more we talk about. Just a couple of things real quick. What would you, to the person listening right now who has had abuse as a part of their story, man, woman, the teen listening, what encouragement would you just give to them right now?
I just need whoever is hearing this and whoever is battling this, like, first they have to know that nothing they did was their fault. I do not care if you were drunk at a party. I don't care if you were half naked, if you were passed out. I don't care if you were in a relationship and you had said yes 10,000 times and that one time you said no.
Yeah.
Nothing you did caused this to happen. And I really need people to understand that, because we do. Like, I mean, even looking back, like as a child, like I was 3 to, like I said, 4th, 5th grade. And like in my head, I always was like, there must have been something. There must have been something that I did, or something that he was a grown man, like, and I have friends who they were in college and they're like, well, maybe if I hadn't had that drink. And I actually have one of those stories too. And I did the same thing. I shouldn't have drank. I shouldn't have been in my apartment with him. Well, he was a friend and I trusted him. And what he did was that's what he did.
Yeah.
And so I just need you to know that, one, it's not your fault. And 2, you are not damaged and you are not unloved, and you will rise from this and you will use this to heal yourself and to heal others, because somebody needs you to tell your story so that they can tell their story. And I didn't get to touch on this, and I just want to say it really quick, because I have so many people who think that this does not apply to them. Well, I was never abused, so I don't understand. The one thing that I can promise you, you may not have been abused, but you know someone who has.
Yeah.
Statistically, you know somebody. Yep. Just because they haven't told you does not mean that it has not happened. We have to create safe spaces for our kids and our neighbors and our friends and anybody. We have to create that space for them to be able to tell us.
Yeah.
Because at some point, they will want to talk.
Right.
And they need to talk. Like you have to share your story. Like I cannot stress that enough. We have to share our story. And then my biggest takeaway after that is, after you share your story or you acknowledge that it happened, because we will deny and hide it for as long as we can. After you I don't want to say accept, but after you acknowledge that, yes, I was abused and it happened, and you can share your story. You have to talk to somebody.
Yes.
You have to get into therapy.
Yep.
And like I said, that's a whole nother thing. But those are my 2 biggest things. Is just acknowledging it is not enough to heal yourself. There is so much that you have to realize about abuse and what your brain will do to protect you from it.
Yeah.
And I cannot vouch for therapy enough. I tell it to all the girls in my group. I tell it to anybody who reaches out. I'm like, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Now I need you to talk to somebody.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. We have talked about counseling quite a few times already on this podcast. And
it's huge.
It is.
Huge.
And you need to talk to somebody who has wisdom to help you walk through that and the coping thing and just all of that, how to process it, so that you can continue to tell the story and find healing in it. But okay, Tiffany, I don't know how we really switch gears from that. I am very thankful that you have shared your story. Like I said, just as a bystander watching on, I've seen what God is already doing. And I have seen just, you do look different in your Facebook pictures. And there's just you can feel, I can sense in the pictures that weight that you talked about really has been lifted. And it doesn't mean that it's gone, because you still deal with this every day and will, like you said, for the rest of your life. It's part of your story, but that you are able to take it and you're finding healing, and that you're able to use it and give voice to other people is huge and super courageous. So
thank you.
Keep on going, keep sharing the story. We're going to link in all of the show notes some images where they can find you, where they can find Project Ember and all of that. But I've got to ask you, you and I have a shared love for several things. And it's our favorite season is coming.
Gosh, it is. It's coming. I'm like, September 1st. I'm like, it is time.
This is what I need you to say. So I have to ask, Tiffany, do you already have your fall decorations up at your house?
I have some.
Okay.
Only because last year was the first year I have ever decorated for Halloween.
Okay.
It's always been just fall.
Yeah.
And last year I was like, we're doing Halloween. And so, but I didn't feel right pulling the Halloween out September 1st.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of fall, and then I'm going to do Halloween and then all the fall. But
yes.
I mean, we're, all things pumpkin, all things apple.
Yes.
Like,
yes. Do you have a favorite? What is your favorite fall, like treat, dessert,
oh my
coffee
gosh.
or whatever? I mean,
honestly, all of it. Like it's like
all the fall things.
Yes. It's like pie season. It's soup season.
Yes.
It's like all the comfort food is this time of the year.
Yes.
Like
I really don't know how people cannot love fall. I know there are people, I'm sorry if you're listening and you love fall. We still love you, but I don't know how it's possible to not love all things.
I know. I'm the same. I'm not a summer
related.
person. I hate being hot and I hate bugs. And I'm like, so fall all the way.
I'm right with you. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for being here today.
No, thank you
Glad
for having me. Thank you.
Well, I'm so grateful that you joined us today for this conversation in this story. Tiffany sent us a message and said, Sarah, I accidentally shared the wrong statistic. Could you please make sure to update it to all those listening? She shared with us that 1 out of 10 women and 1 out of 6 men will experience some kind of sexual abuse or harassment in their lifetime. And the statistic is actually 8 out of 10 women and 1 out of 6 men will experience that. And so we know a lot of you listening are probably impacted by the story that Tiffany shared today. We'd love to encourage you to go check out the show notes. We're going to link some websites and some resources there. Tiffany mentioned several books. We've linked those as well. We are also big believers around here in counseling, and Tiffany shared how important having a professional just help her navigate trauma, and her story had been to her. And so we would highly encourage you to check that out. We are going to link some of our favorite counseling suggestions here in the area. And if you're somewhere else, not inside the St. Louis, St. Charles area, we'd encourage you to find somebody local that can help you just kind of process along as well. But friends, we're so grateful that you listened today. As we said, I know it was a more difficult conversation that we've had here on the podcast, but take a moment, make sure to go share this episode with a friend or a family member. We think it's going to make a lot of difference. And I hope that you will go check out Project Ember on social media and go follow that. Later this week on our Now That's Something Good social pages, we're going to be posting and sharing some images that will just further connect you to Tiffany's story. We hope you have a great week and join us back here next week for the next episode of Now That's Something Good.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, we'd invite you to reach out to us via email. You can reach us at podcast@sarahgood.com. That's podcast@sarah with an H, good.com. Thanks, and have a wonderful rest of your day.